Our final update before the Bills face the Bengals, an injury update with Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills, and my 5 predictions for Sunday night are all coming your way today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Well, folks, this will be the last conversation that we have before the Bills face the Bengals on Sunday Night Football. And so I want to deliver some final thoughts. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills about the injuries, and, of course, my 5 predictions for Sunday night. And we are going to lean into player props for that segment. So it should be fun if you stick around for the end. All right, let's get to my final thoughts here. And we got to talk about Lynval Joseph. The Bills signed another player, added another player this week. Brandon Beane has been busy finding some reinforcements to their roster here at the midway point of the season. We talked about the addition of Leonard Fournette. We talked about Rasul Douglas, but on Thursday, the team announced the signing of defensive tackle Linval Joseph. So let's talk about it. Linval Joseph is 35 years old. He just turned 35 on October 10th. He was a second-round pick out of East Carolina in 2010 by the Giants. Spent 4 seasons with the Giants, then 6 seasons with the Vikings, 2 with the Chargers, and then last year with the Eagles. In fact, he signed with the Eagles halfway through the season and was part of their Super Bowl run. And I'm sure that's kind of his plan this year with the Buffalo Bills. Signed a 1-year, $1.2 million deal with incentives that make it worth up to $3.72 million. And while Linval Joseph is past his prime, there was a considerable stretch of his career where he was regarded as one of the best run-stopping defensive tackles in the NFL, and that's what he was brought in to do. Stop the run, help fill the void left behind with the injury to Daquan Jones. Now, temper your expectations for him as a pass rusher. That's really not where he wins, but he should and will be an asset to the Buffalo Bills run defense. And as you know, the Bills run defense has been a little leaky at times this year. 31st in yards per carry on the ground at 5.1 yards per carry given up this season. Now, Sean McDermott talked a little bit about some of the issues with the run defense this year, and it's a lot of what I've said on this podcast, where you had a couple of alignment issues where you got gashed. You had the Miami game, the second half, you're leading, and you're letting them have rushing production. You know, I feel like when the Bills want to buckle down and stop the run, they typically do. So I'm not sure the reality is quite as concerning as the numbers will tell you. Because on a snap-to-snap basis, it's really good. I would say 95% of the time the Bills' run defense is really good, but there's this chunk of time that, causes some problems, and some of that was earlier in the season where they had some alignment problems. But anyways, Linval Joseph is going to help the Bills' run defense. I think this is a very useful addition. Sometimes it's hard to onboard players in the middle of a season. It's not hard to onboard a nose tackle in an even front defense. He should be able to hit the ground running and help this team right away. And some of the things that are benefits to the signing other than, well, he helps the run defense. First of all, you have less Jordan Phillips and less Tim Settle on the field on running downs, and that's a good thing. If you've watched these guys on tape, they're very, very inconsistent. Tim Settle tends to play a little out of control, isn't very disciplined with his gap integrity, And Jordan Phillips struggles to fight pressure with pressure and anchor. He's just not a good run defender. And it's hard to reconcile that because he's like 350 pounds and you'd think that he should be a good run defender, but he's not. His value is more on passing downs. He's a much better pass rusher than he is as a run defender. And so I think being able to add Lynval Joseph to the mix is going to reduce the need to rely on bad run defenders to defend the run. Let's just put it how it is. And hopefully Poona Ford can play like he did against the Buccaneers moving forward. But that was a really encouraging performance. And so I think this is a nice addition. And now one thing that we also have to keep in mind is it's not just Jordan Phillips and Tim Settle having to play less. You know, we talk about the defensive line and how it's so important for the second level. And so this is going to allow Terrel Bernard to play more free. Of course, Tyrel Dotson, and even Jordan Poyer, as he's getting more and more opportunity to play on the second level. Having this type of space eater that's not going to get rocked off the ball will help that second level. Now, one question that I've received quite a bit from people regarding this signing and some of the enthusiasm that I have for it is, well, why was this guy just sitting around as a street free agent midway through the season? Well, at this point in his career, like a lot of players, that's what they do. I mean, he's 35 years old. He's a niche player, right? He's kind of just a run defender. He's an old run defender. And so for him, he wants to latch on somewhere in the middle of the season, somewhere that wants him, that has a need, and he can go on a run. That's what he's doing. That's what he did last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. And look, he actually played a fair amount for Philly last year, 38% of the snaps for the Eagles last year on a very, very good defensive line that had Fletcher Cox, that had Jordan Davis, that had him, that had Ndamukong Suh, had a lot of good edge players as well. Still played 38% of the snaps despite being a midseason addition. And what's interesting about Lynval Joseph is that he's been a high-volume snap player throughout his career, even going back to 2021 with the Chargers, 58% of the snaps. The year before that, 70% of the snaps in 2020. In fact, he's played 64% or more snaps in every season of his career except for 2. And most of his seasons are like in the mid to high 60% range. And so for a, kind of a specialized player, he does play quite a bit. Now, another little footnote here regarding not just Lynval Joseph, but the 3 additions that were made this week, Rasul Douglas, Leonard Fournette, and Lynval Joseph, all 3 are Super Bowl champions. They have Super Bowl rings. They know what it takes to win a Super Bowl. And so it's nice to infuse a roster with that type of background, right, to help a team that's trying to get over the hump this year. Now, the corresponding move to the addition of Lynval Joseph to the active roster is putting Kaiir Elam on injured reserve. And it's been an interesting little stretch here for Kaiir Elam, obviously not winning the starting job out of camp, being a healthy scratch a few times, obviously last week with Josh Norman playing over him. This is an interesting sequence of events. And Brandon Beane met with the media this week, and he mentioned Elam to injured reserve as a possibility. And he said there was a nagging ankle injury, that I believe to be a bone bruise that just needs some time to heal. And I was honestly encouraged listening to Brandon Beane talking about Kaiir Elam and saying, look, he's done everything we've asked him to do. He has a great attitude. The light bulb just hasn't come on yet for him. And I like how he referenced Brandon Beane. He referenced Rasul Douglas and Josh Norman as players who were in similar spots early in their careers. And then eventually the light bulb came on, and Josh Norman and Rasul Douglas have become impact starters in the NFL. And they're certainly hoping the same for Kaiir Elam. And it's nice to know that they were involved in that turnaround for a guy like Josh Norman. And hopefully that can be the case with Kaiir Elam. Now, obviously, when we're evaluating Kaiir Elam, it's nice to know that he has had an injury, and that's not something that helps him perform well, obviously. I think a lot about the comments that I had coming out of the All-22 review of Kaiir Elam in that big start against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where Calvin Ridley, caught several passes over him. And one of my big talking points was it just felt like he was a tick late. It wasn't that he was getting completely roasted or that he was out of position. It just was a tick late. And having this knowledge of the injury, kind of provides some context to that, and understanding that not being able to drive off your ankle like you want to certainly impacts your ability to be on schedule when it comes to covering good, talented receivers like Calvin Ridley. So the roster moves continue this week with the addition of Linval Joseph, Kaiir Elam to injured reserve, to go with the additions of Leonard Fournette and Rasul Douglas. All right, there's a lot of injury stuff to get into. Josh Allen, of course, with the shoulder. Matt Milano put out a weird post that some people are questioning. We're going to talk about that in addition to, who's in and who's out for Sunday night against the Bengals. But I got to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the funnest, most exciting, easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. I love the format. It's awesome. It's just you against the numbers. It's not this deal where it's you against thousands of other players, which includes professionals, which includes sharks. It's only you against numbers. Here's what you do. You select 2 or more players, you pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place your entry. That's it. It does not take long. Picks can be made in under a minute. And then when you win, the withdrawals are super, super quick. I've been having a lot of fun with Prize Picks. I've been winning, hitting the over on Josh Allen passing touchdowns and the over on Dalton Kincaid receiving yards. And so I'm probably going to continue that again this week against the Bengals. So check it out. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. I'm joined now by Kyle Trimble. He's a doctor of physical therapy. He runs bangedupbills.com. You can follow him on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, at bangedupbills. He joins us each week to talk injuries ahead of the Bills game. And, of course, the Bills coming off of a nice extended mini bye, playing on Thursday Night Football, a little extra rest going up against the Bengals on Sunday night. Injury report looks good. Now, that doesn't consider that there's 6 important players on injured reserve, but it looks pretty good in terms of the week-to-week report. But I do want to start with a new addition to injured reserve, and that's Kaiir Elam. Brandon Beane kind of mentioned during his press availability this week that he has been dealing with a nagging ankle situation. And so curious what you have to share on that. And if this is kind of a 4-week deal, you think it's long-term, what do you have for us on Elam?
Talked in pretty good length about Kaiir Elam has nagging ankle injury. He's been on injury report for the past few weeks with the ankle injury, though practicing in full. And then also noted that he had aggravated an injury in training camp. In fact, it was Sean McDermott who said that, and then Beane reiterated that there. So I didn't have anything specifically from when Elam injured the ankle in training camp, but considering he's still dealing with this almost 2-3 months later, you got to wonder if maybe there's not more of a bone bruise in there or something that just isn't getting better. Because if it was like it could be a tendonitis, but that would be more muscle related. And then even if it was a thing, you could see that just being taping up and try to get through that there. We don't even see high ankle sprains limit guys as much as they do here in this case. So you got to think of it's more structural, and then you start thinking bone bruise. Strong suspicion that he had something like that last year. He had an injury last year, and then it turned into an ankle, and he did miss some time with that midway through the season. You got to wonder if he did do something like that and then just aggravated something again in training camp. And then just to really matter, especially with how bone bruises work, is where it's not a full fracture, but like the outside portion can become damaged, just like a bone bruise or just like a regular bruise. But it just edema, constantly gets pain, generalized swelling in there with the edema, and it just never really kind of goes away, and then just going to limit the ability to push off it, jump, do all the things he needs to do as a cornerback there. So between processing the game with and then not having a fully functioning ankle, that's going to make playing at an elite level very difficult. So I think the team is hiding behind an injury a little bit. That's a phrase I steal with from my buddy, Sports Injury Central, but you can hide behind that, get them on injury reserve for a little bit, allow them to get fully right, and maybe let the game slow down a little bit like we've seen them do in the past with other players. Then maybe you can come back later in the season healthy and actually get.
All right, so we've got Kaiir Elam, and the next player I want to talk about is Josh Allen. And we know he's going to play. He doesn't have a game day designation, but he didn't practice on Wednesday, and every NFL account couldn't wait to share that Josh Allen didn't practice on Wednesday. We all knew that it was load management, but what can you say to Bills Mafia as they see Josh Allen deal with this shoulder injury? We see him getting extra attention, right? Nobody wants to see any of this. Certainly the national media can't wait to, get some concern out there about his availability week to week. What's going on there, and how can Bills Mafia best handle this on a weekly basis?
It's all about the clicks but for the local people and them worrying about Josh Allen not practicing on Wednesday, it's all about load management. He suffered an AC joint sprain against the Giants. Through that, we saw that he struggled with the accuracy against Patriots, against Buccaneers, and things are just still trying to heal up in there. So if you got to give him an extra day off on top of a longer break, let's do that. Playbook. He knows what he needs to do. I don't think throwing on Wednesday is going to be the do or die difference on him, performing on Sunday there. So, and the key thing with this too is I'm sure in the past few weeks they've had to do some type of numbing injection. Still seeing him suffer some re-injury the area with pain and whatnot. So if they can allow him to throw naturally without colors, without any monsters throwing pattern, that would allow him to get the rest he needs, and then instead of having to keep numbing it up and then trying to get through the games there, because then that's where we can see additional damage if he takes another hit and doesn't realize until. So I think it's smart management. Wednesday practice missing does give Kaiir Elam some reps, which he's a backup for a reason. We want to make sure he's ready to go in case Josh does have to miss some anytime.
Last thing here, and it's not really anything new, but whatever this Facebook account is, that's Matt Milano. I don't know if it's real or not, but it has certainly found its way to my emails and my, Discord channel, my subtext, my DMs. Everyone wants to know if I have anything on Matt Milano and him showing a picture of himself kind of celebrating on the field in full uniform with the caption "soon." Do you have anything here? Because I need to be able to answer some of these questions, and I mean, it's confusing for me.
From the digging I found, it's fake. So I reached out to a friend over at Buffalo Rumblings, Circling the Wagons. I've been on their podcast number. I reached out to him because he found that it was fake. It alerted me to some other accounts who found that it was fake. And one of them being Bill's Chat Pod. They found that the account was created on July 14th, 2023. There's a lot of Boston College stuff, some generalized Bills stuff. And then with, I believe, Syracuse Upstate, Syracuse.com. He also did a little further digging and found that this is a fan account. And it toward any positive news from Matt Milano, but he's not so much on social media to begin with, so it was really odd for him. And going back to the road injury, injured it in week 5, the right knee. He suffered a fracture. They haven't described exactly what happened. I want to keep this as vague as possible and say lower leg, like a plateau fracture and at least an MCL sprain. So for Matt Milano to say a month out soon, it's really an aggressive timeline. I had forecasted that he could return late in the season, though it's a small chance because of how the healing rates are. Prior cases we can compare against, it's not, and everything else like that just doesn't line up there. So it's all fake news, false, whatever else, but I do want to see him start doing something around mid-December. That's where I think we're going to really start seeing there's a real return possible for the.
Somebody once said to me that the most simple explanation is the truth. And I think that applies well here with Matt Milano. I mean, the guy on his Instagram account, he's silent, right? I mean, quiet person, right? He doesn't say much. He's not all of a sudden on a random Facebook account going to start sharing injury updates on his status for the rest of the season. So just always keep that in mind, folks. The simplest explanation is always the truth. Nothing to see here on this Matt Milano picture. Dr. Kyle Trimble, thanks for being here. Hopefully we have just as little to talk about next week as we did this week. Folks, I am obsessed with DoorDash. The convenience is simply unmatched, especially in my busy life. We're all busy, right? We're all trying to figure out what's for dinner. We're all trying to figure out when we're going to have time to go to the grocery store. Well, DoorDash takes care of that stuff for you. They will bring you food from your local restaurants, your favorite local restaurants. So bring it right to your front door. I order all the time. I've been really on a smoke pit kick. I'm not going to lie. I've ordered 6 times in the last 2 weeks from Smoke Pit. Their barbecue's so good. They have amazing sausage. They have these wings that are smoked that are delicious. I can't get enough. And I just go to DoorDash and they drop it off 20, 25 minutes later. I absolutely Love it. They'll also bring you groceries. They'll get you groceries just like you picked them off the shelf for yourself. So check it out. Stop worrying about what's for dinner. Stop worrying about what you're going to snack on. Stop worrying about when you're going to find time to get to the grocery store. Let DoorDash handle that for you. Got a deal here. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23, subject to change. Terms apply. Again, that's 50% off up to a $10 value when you use our code LOCKED23 on your first order and spend $15 or more, subject to change. Terms apply. All right, folks, it's prediction time. But before we get there, I would love to invite you to join the Locked On Bills subtext community. Folks, we are having fun. It's obviously what I've always told you it is. We have the subtext where I send out updates on the Bills, right? Anytime there's major news, I send out a text with my first reaction. So when they signed Linval Joseph, when they traded for Rasul Douglas, my first thought went to our subtext subscribers. We talk Bills football all week, so people text me. I respond. It's really, really fun. I've enjoyed getting to know the listeners more and, of course, sharing more of myself. And, of course, I give you my live in-game text as well. So as the Bills are playing the Bengals on Sunday night, I'm going to send out a lot of texts probably after every series, letting you know what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing out there. But we've also added a Discord community. So anybody who joins the subtext gets access to the Discord, and that has been an absolute blast. Talking Bills all week long as a community. Sabres, we have a fitness and nutrition channel in there. We're actually doing a burpee challenge for the month of November with several people. A lot of fun stuff. We're just having a good time building community. And also that's where I put my film clips. So my analysis of the All-22, you'll get those film clips on the Discord. So on Monday, I'm going to spend the whole day watching Bengals tape, and you'll see those clips with my analysis as well. So check it out. There's a link in today's show notes to join. So whether you're on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast, click on the show notes. You'll see a link to join the Locked On Bills subtext community. Once you join, you'll also get a link right to that Discord channel as well. Would love for you to be part of it. We are having fun. Do not miss out. All right, prediction time. I hear you. I'm bad at these predictions this year. Loud and clear, folks. But we're going to switch it up once again. See what we can do, right? I'm not just going to call the same plays over and over here. You know what I mean? We're going to try some different stuff. And so this week, we're going to lean into player props. So I have FanDuel player props right here. And I want to give you some player props that I really like this week for Bills and Bengals. So here's what I'm doing. Number one, Josh Allen. Right now, FanDuel has Josh Allen over under for passing touchdowns at 1.5. Folks, I am smashing the over on this. Josh Allen's had 2 passing touchdowns in each of the last 5 games, and I have picked up this prop every single week. You can ask my brother. He's with me every single week. Right before the game, I get on there, and I'm like, I'm taking this. And for 5 weeks in a row, it has hit. And I think there's going to be some points scored in this game. And if there's points scored and the Bills are scoring them, it's probably because Josh Allen's throwing passing touchdowns. So put me down for, well, I guess two or more passing touchdowns for Josh Allen. Number 2, Joe Burrow is also listed as over under 1.5 passing touchdowns. I am smashing the over on this as well. Joe Burrow has had at least 2 touchdowns passing in the last 3 games for Cincinnati. And I think he's doing a lot better job of late getting more players involved than just Jamar Chase. And so I think you will see Joe Burrow also score or throw 2 or more passing touchdowns on Sunday night against the Bills. So I'm going the over on 1.5 passing touchdowns for Josh Allen and Joe Burrow for this game. Number 3, and I really like this one. James Cook over under for rushing yards is set at 50.5, and I am smashing the over on this as well. James Cook has hit more than 50 rushing yards in each of the last 3 games, and since his run defense has not been good. They're allowing 5 yards per carry. That's 30th in the NFL, and they're also 28th in total rushing yards allowed. James Cook's going to get his share. He might rip off an explosive run or 2. I feel like he's going to get 50.5 yards, or it'd be 51 yards for the over to hit. So I am smashing the over on that. Number 4, I'm calling this the Dalton Kincaid parlay. They have 2 Dalton Kincaid props that I really like, and I've been I've been raking on these Dalton Kincaid props lately, so we're going to continue that again this week. They have Dalton Kincaid. His over-under for receiving yards is 40.5. His over-under for receptions is 3.5. I'm taking the over on both. Over 40.5 receiving yards, over 3.5 receptions for Dalton Kincaid. The Cincinnati Bengals have given up the most fantasy points per game to tight ends, and Dalton Kincaid's hot right now. And I think he's a critical piece of this offense now and moving forward. And I don't see this as a week where they take him off the menu. I really don't. So put me down for at least 41 receiving yards and at least 4 receptions for Dalton Kincaid on Sunday Night Football. My last prediction, as you know, is what I think is going to happen in terms of the winner of the game. And as you know, I've picked the Bengals to win this game. And there's been some really weird backlash for me making that prediction. I hope I'm wrong. I really, really do. Trust me, nothing would make me happier than on the last segment of our post-game podcast for me to say, you know what? I should have picked the Bills to win. But I am picking what I think is going to happen. I want to be honest with you. More than I want to just hype up the Bills and tell you how good they are, I want to be honest with you on this podcast, and I feel like I have been. I've went in on Josh Allen this year. I've been critical of Sean McDermott. I've done those things. You're not listening to this podcast feeling like you're just going to hear homer takes. I'm a fan of the Buffalo Bills. I love this football team. I've dedicated my entire professional career to the Buffalo Bills. All right, they have given me more than I could ever ask for. I don't think they're going to win this game. And I'm sorry to say that to you. I hope I am wrong. The Bengals are playing better football right now, and they're at home. They're the favorites to win the game. So it's not like a hot take that I don't think the Bills aren't going to win. I'm going with the team playing better that's at home. Now, I hope it's the exact challenge that the Bills need, right? And you could talk yourself into that for sure. Like, you want to talk about focusing a football team, gearing up for a big stretch, right? It's mid-season. You want to play your best football. How about a challenge like this? It might be exactly what the doctor ordered, and I hope that's the case. But I have some PTSD over last year, folks. I'm not going to lie. The Bengals, when they played the Bills both times, and I know we didn't see the entire Monday night game, but their attitude was the same. Their intentionality was pretty doggone impressive. They were confident, and you know what? They bullied the Bills. I hate saying it, but they did. Now, I like some of the things that are different about this game. I mean, let's face it, Cincy has played better this year, but they have played some absolute stinkers and look bad on both sides of the football. Like, that's totally true. I like that Sean McDermott is calling this defense and not Leslie Frazier. I like the revenge component. The Bills have beaten the team, well, at least the Chiefs, 2 years in a row after knocking them out of the playoffs. They went into Arrowhead and won both times. Like, I love that has happened, and I love that possibility in this game. But the Bills are 1-3 this year away from Orchard Park. Congrats on beating the Commanders, who stink out loud. But you lost to the Patriots and the Jets on the road, and, of course, the Jaguars. You're telling me they can't go into Cincy and drop a game to the Bengals? It's totally possible. I hope it does not happen. I repeat, go Bills. I want them to win. I want to show up on Monday and say, you know what? I was an idiot. I shouldn't have picked the Bills to lose this game. Nothing would make me happier. But I think when you just kind of take your heart on it out of it and you look at how both teams are playing, you consider that the Bengals are at home, that the Bills are 1-3 away from Highmark Stadium. You know what? It just doesn't look good. Hope I'm wrong. And I hope that you will continue listening to this podcast and you can appreciate honest analysis from somebody who is absolutely in love with the Buffalo Bills. And that's what I hope to deliver for you always on this podcast. All right. Bleacher Report right after the game. Stay up late with me. Sunday Night Football. The game ends. We're going live on Bleacher Report. Then we're getting to work on the post-game podcast. And then, of course, as soon as the tape is available on Monday morning, I'm diving into that. So be in the Discord channel. We'll get the film clips as they speak to me. And, of course, plenty of content coming out of the Bengals game, going into the next opponent with Denver, Monday Night Football. A lot of big stuff here going on for the Buffalo Bills. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills! And I look forward to catching up with you again after the game.